Testing, testing. Ashley, could you turn me up over here, please? Hello? Testing, 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 testing. Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone, to our second town hall. Could everyone make their way to their seats, if you feel like sitting? And we're getting ready to kick it off. We're a little bit late. We had a few technical difficulties with the video streaming, but that seems to be set up. Is that right, Summer? Okay, we're live. Welcome to the town hall again. My name is Eric Trower, and we are going to be talking about the ballot measures for this annual general meeting. And we'll get into those in just a few minutes. Could you go to slide number 2, please? The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to welcome a county executive who's going to speak to us a few minutes. Then is Carol here? Well, that's an oversight. It's a good thing that we have other board members who are familiar with the budget to explain it. Well, actually, they're out of town, I think. But then I'll be coming back up for a couple of minutes to talk about things that are not on the ballot that some people might have expected to be on the ballot. And then Mike D'Angelo is going to explain the roads measure, and Mike D'Angelo is not here either. He's out of town, babysitting from some grandchildren, and so we're going to let him attend virtually. We've technology these days, right? And then we're going to talk about the parks and trails and so on, that measure, and Karen Borchert is here to talk to us about that. And so, without further delay, I'm going to introduce our president of Sudden Valley, Larry Brown, and he has a couple of words and another introduction.
Thanks, Eric. I'm not going to take a long time because I'm here basically to introduce Jack Lyles, who's the elected county executive of Whatcom County. And the reason that I invited him is to address a question that has come up again and again and again over the years that I have been here. And that is, don't pay dues. The county close down the association. The county or the city will take us over. And I've discussed this with many people. We've had a visit from 3 county council members about 2.5 years ago who came and said, no, that's not going to happen, but the question keeps coming up. So I mentioned it with Jack several times, and he very graciously offered to come out and speak with us. So this is a perfect day for that. We're going to have a roads measure, and so Jack will talk about the relationship between us and the county. Jack, good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Good afternoon, folks. Good to be here today. As Larry mentioned, the question was posed to me of whether or not the county would be interested to take over the road system of Sudden Valley. I guess that's probably the most direct way that it was explained to me. And I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes to say that personally, I don't think you want the county to do that. And because I think that the cost would be well beyond the capacity of me and a lot of you to be able to make that happen. And then also that it presents some serious challenges for the county to undertake a program such as that. First thing that we have to remember is when Sudden Valley was established 50 years ago, the decision was made by the developers to put all of the roads in to a development standard that wasn't to county standards. The roads were narrower. You've got a bit more, some scenic drives, you've got some slopes and some hills that if we were putting that together ourselves under county road standards, that the developers would have had to put hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars more into the road system than what they've done. Over the years, you folks have bought property, hopefully with the knowledge that it is a private road system and that you have an obligation to take care of that. Your situation is not unique in Whatcom County. Sudden Valley, Birch Bay Village, Snow Line, I might have some of these wrong, but if you get into Glacier Springs and you get in Black Mountain Ranch and, you know, throughout the community, you've got long plats, short plats, and rather large divisions that are all have private road systems, and they aren't put to the same standards that we do. So if Whatcom County were to take this over at this particular time, we would want to, for liability purposes and to get into the system, we would want the Sudden Valley road system to be brought up to current standards. And it's not because we really probably would desire that to happen, but we're taking over liability for something that we don't have at this particular time. By we, I'm talking the government, that we don't have at this particular time that would be very costly to handle. As many of you may or you may not know is that the county is basically the deep pocket when anything goes wrong. And when we have an accident out on the road and somebody's going too fast and somebody drives them off the road, you'd think you'd have two insurance companies that would just work against each other and take the whole thing. But typically what will happen is that people will look at it, and they'll also look at the condition of the road, and they'll look at where the stop signs are, and if we're 2 or 3% at fault, and it's a deep pocket accident, we're involved in those lawsuits more often than not. I mean, it's not all the time, but we get involved in a fair number of those. So that would be a liability that we would be taking a very close look at. I had a similar situation when I was mayor of Linden in the 2000s, where one of our developments in town decided to go alone, and the residents then after the fact came in and said, hey, we want to be, we'd like the city to take it over. And we said, fine, bring it up to standards, and then we'll do that. So anyway, folks, I don't know the details of what your ballot measure are. I mean, it's $14 a month or something like that is what's coming forward. Seems, from my perspective, looking into it is that's far less costly and a lot more value for your dollar than trying to get the county to take this over. You know, the county does have a responsibility if water districts, let's say, fail. We take them, we're under law obligated to take them over. That doesn't mean, though, that the county takes over the general costs of running it. What that means is that the county takes a water district over, and then we, through the authority, assesses members of the water district the amount of money that it takes to make it solvent again. So it's not something that it's just things get rolled over into the general government of entities when organizations default. So anyway, I encourage you to work together as a community. Protect your investments. I know from my experience in the building community is that ongoing investment into infrastructure is extremely important. If you get behind on it, it gets extremely costly. The county's behind on our investment in infrastructure. We knew in 1996 that the exterior of the courthouse leaked. When I came on as executive in 2012, we hadn't done anything with it. Probably would have cost us $1 million in 1996 to seal it and to protect it. The consultants say right now it's $32 million to fix it. We have a jail right now that hasn't had money put into it. In 2012, we put a program together to try to get a new jail. Who knows whether it's going to pass again on November 7th or not, but if it doesn't, the consultants say we need to spend $40 million on our existing jail. That gives us no mental health space. It gives us no programming space. And truthfully, folks, I don't know how to manage the project to be able to make it work. Can you imagine remodeling your house with 3 kids and let's say mom and dad in it while you're remodeling a house? Can you imagine remodeling a building with 200 convicted felons, another 40 staff, plus probably another 40 construction workers, and you have to do that, and you have to make sure that every piece of metal that you use is put away securely every night so that it can't be doing harm to people. What I'm saying is that Sudden Valley, from my perspective, has a lot of the same. So at the end of what maybe I should have, but I'd be more than happy to answer. I've been in enough of these before that I can get myself in a little if somebody doesn't do that.
Oh, okay.
I think they want to get you on the tape.
We have a microphone for folks to use for questioning, and as is always the custom, if we could state our name and address, we'd appreciate that for the record. And first off.
Sonia Volt, 7 Loganberry Lane, in Gate 5. It's just to address your question. I think most of us, regarding the roads, understand the fact that, the county absolutely can't take over the roads. It's unrealistic to do that. I think some of the question is, since the county maintains Glen Haven Lakes on some of their roads, and then they have the private road agreement on their side roads. A lot of people, especially like in the areas, let's say where I live, we only have, we're more scattered, a lot of us, and the question is, why can't we have a road agreement amongst the neighbors? We actually own our roads. Our deeds are titled to us, not to Sudden Valley. And so the question is, why can't we have a road agreement similar to what Glen Haven Lakes has? You guys maintain their culverts in the main area, and then the areas that are too hilly, narrow, insane for the county to maintain, then they share, and they only pay like $69 a year or whatever, into that nonprofit to maintain their roads. And that's kind of what's going on. That we're living right next door to another HOA, and that's really what's causing these questions. It's not so much that I think anybody really thinks the county's should realistically take over the roads. I think it's because we see what's going on next door.
And I'm sorry, I don't know the specific details of. You're talking Glen Haven Lakes.
Right.
Yeah, and possibly some of you folks know it more. I'll look into it if you'd like to give me an email on a personal basis, and I'll try to find out whether the county has agreements.
It's the main road, and then it's just an issue. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get
Yeah,
off on that. I was just explaining why some of those questions.
The county does have about 910 miles of road, and where they start and stop is quite complicated. I've been surprised at times when I've actually looked into it of what our responsibilities are and that. As it comes to the stormwater portion of it and the NPDES permitting, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permits that we have is that can get a little bit squirrely on where our responsibilities are too. But all I know is in general Sudden Valley is Whatcom County doesn't have a direct responsibility for the roads, just as we don't in Birch Bay Village and quite a number of other developments throughout the county.
Okay, next I saw Sue. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Mac, name and address, please.
Matt Carter, 8 Morning Beach Drive, Bellingham, just right in this part of the Sudden Valley. First, thanks for coming, Jack. I was
You're welcome.
looking forward to hearing you talk. As I've been around here about 14 years and been on the board, and as Larry said, this is a kind of an ancient topic, and from my perspective, and I think a lot of people have been on the board and encountered this question, it really does boil down to exactly what you said. The roads do not meet county standards, and it has been addressed several times over just the time period I've been here with county officials. And my question is, at no time have I ever heard an actual monetary estimate of the cost, even a napkin sort of an estimate, of what it would take to bring them up to code so that the county would be inclined or willing to take it over. So I'm just wondering if you know if there is an actual estimate.
How many
somewhere.
miles of roads does the valley
40.
have?
40 here, 40 miles of roads in this community that we maintain.
I wouldn't be surprised that it would take $500,000 a mile, so $20 million. That is
Okay.
what they call a scientific, wild.
Sounds good.
Wild guess. With
Okay.
another word in the middle
We'll
of
put
it.
it on the ballot and I'm sure it'll pass.
Thank you. And I saw,
That's extremely rough math, and that would be, you just wanted a number to spitball out there. I know that running government contracts, going to the prevailing wage and doing all of the things that we need to do as a government, you're going to spend 40% more than what you're going to be able to do it on the private side to bring things up to date. Now, obviously, not every road in the valley right now needs to be rebuilt, but from my practical building experiences, is you need to continue to do overlays on them so that you don't bust the base up. And if you keep the base solid and you keep it sealed so water doesn't get into it, these roads are going to last a long, long time. But you have to get on them, and you have to be on them on a regular scheduled basis. Because once you lose them, then the dollar amount that you're going to be investing is going to be exponentially higher than what it would be even today.
thank you. And I had Sue next.
Hi, Sue Nuida. I live on Polo Park Drive. And you talked a little bit earlier about liability. If we don't meet county codes. Is that a liability that falls on Sudden Valley community itself if we're not up to county codes? So are we taking risk that maybe we should try to avoid?
The county is all right from a liabilities perspective for the roads that we haven't done major renovations on, because they've been existing prior to when the new standards have come out. So it's basically, if they're built to the standards that were in place at the time that they were in, doesn't put us into a big position. I don't know if any of you know have gone down the Badger Road, and it's 50 miles an hour, and there's ditches on both sides, and there's 8 inches of beyond the white 8 inches before you fall into the ditch. And then you go through sections of it where we've gone through and we've widened the whole thing out. We've got fog lines in it. We've got bike lanes on both sides of it, and the speed limit's 45 miles an hour. The reason for that is that because of the number of entrances going into it and the design standards that we have, we build the new road, and the design standards say that the speed limit has to be lower than that. Since we haven't improved the other ones, it doesn't put us into a position, but when we go improve it, we've got to bring it to the standards of today. Sudden Valley, as I know it, and I'm not an attorney, you guys have probably been involved in it, are probably pure as you reasonably can be with the roads the way they were put in 50 years ago.
And so the reason why I'm asking is this something we as a community should aim towards going forward as we're building and replacing roads? And Eric, specifically, I think had a snow plow go off the side of his road, like just in front of his house last winter. And so it's my reason. Is there a safety reason that we should aim towards that?
I don't think that the density, the amount of traffic that you have, that if I was advising you and on the board, and I'm not, it's not in my wheelhouse at this particular time, and I don't know whether I'll live here or not, but I wouldn't particularly aim for that goal. I think that the risk is pretty minimal at that particular time. If you got some heavier used areas that that you have you've had problems with or whatever, I mean, obviously, I think as an association, you'd want to take a look at those particular intersections or those particular roads to see if you could make, but to say you want to bring everything and work towards bringing everything up is I don't think that would be probably a reasonable path. Again, what I'm saying is just totally subjective. I'm talking more as an individual than anybody at this particular time, other than as county executive related to, I wouldn't support taking your road system over.
Okay, I have one more over here, please. Sears?
Sears Taylor, 22 Windward Drive. Thank you for coming, Jack.
You're
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, good to be here again.
I appreciate your scientific wild donkey guess. I don't think, with us as a civil engineer background, there's roads that couldn't be fixed at any price. So I don't think the county could take over. Well, I mean, some of the roads, but there's some up in the hills that would never meet the grade standard.
Right.
But my question involves, since we're all our property evaluation, a share of our taxes go to the county. The fact that we're paying for our own roads as an association, what's the possibility of us getting a rebate as an association of the fact that our money goes into the county fund, yet we don't get any road service?
Well, you do get road service as once you reach the gate and get onto Lake Wachtam Boulevard and Lake Louise Road, and you know, your access to the freeway and access into Bellingham and throughout the rest of the county. So you are getting some service. You know, hey, whether it's right or wrong, you know, 50 years ago, the developers of this community decided that the way that it was going to be done was for them to do the private development so that they could self-govern. The people that own property in here could self-govern that, and the roads were put in not to a standard that would have allowed the density of development and through the county's road standard. And you know, we have a history of that happening throughout Whatcom County, basically everywhere in the United States. Interestingly enough, this is a side story. My wife and I are kind of poking around for a winter home to get out of a little bit of the rain in the summer, and we haven't pulled the trigger on this, but we were down with some friends and looking at a house, and the homeowner development dues were $835 a month. You go, okay, there's a wake up right there. Now, the home values that we were looking at as a standard are considerably higher than what they are in Whatcom County, but I have to admit, going through there, the roads were in absolutely great shape. It was well maintained. The guardhouses were doing well. But they were investing, you know, $800,000-$900,000 houses were with an $800 a month dues. So if the average in the valley is let's say 300,000, and I have no idea what it is, you know, you can start proportionally saying is what an investment could or should be to be able to maintain the assets of the community that you have around you. And you know, I know that we have a lot of more working people here down than you do in the Palm Desert area, and it's a totally different economic environment, but people need to realize that you have an investment into your home, and you don't want to lose that. And I'm talking personally here at that particular time. I've always been very concerned when I go look at properties, whether it be on a business end or on a personal end of it, is how well maintained are things, and is the investment into the community that I need to make on a personal balance out to what the equity that I would have into my home. So you have to continue to analyze the tension that you have between the two. So I'm getting a little bit too detailed into my own personal thoughts here. Hopefully I'm doing all right for you. I'm just talking.
We have, if you have time for a couple more questions, we started a little bit late.
I'm doing fine. You guys are the boss, and
Okay.
when I'll answer any questions that people have, as long as you folks want to go. And I told my wife I'd be home at about 4 or earlier.
Okay, so then there's an announcement that I'd like to make to those that are attending us remotely. If you could please, with your questions, include your name and address with the questions that you're sending in.
that would be appreciated. We can't ask a question if we don't know who or where you're from. And so, appreciate that. And next question. And again, name and location, please.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. I'm Holly Miller, 8 Inlet Circle, Gate 1. I'm sort of opening a little bit different bucket of money, but I've always wondered about we pay a lot of money in security, over $500,000 a year, and is it true? I just like to take advantage of the fact you're here, but is it true that, I mean, your deputies would cover the county here? Not the roads, but the actual security by the sheriff's office?
We wouldn't man guard gates or do any ongoing security, but if there's a crime that happens within the valley, the sheriff does have an obligation through his office to come out and respond. I mean, if you live out on the Hemi Road in the county, there's no specific security that handles, but if you have something that you need to call 911 for is we have an obligation to respond. The security that you have at the guard gates is over and above what Whatcom County provides anywhere. We provide general law enforcement, and if you as a community want to make sure that your gates are secure and that you have people checking your homes and driving the community and doing your own association traffic tickets and so on and so forth, because again, the roads aren't ours at this particular time. That's your responsibility.
Do you ever, just because we're over 3,000 people, do you have to keep a certain amount of time or deputy for the population itself? No?
No, the number of deputies that we have is based on the overall population of the county and the needs that we have to provide, traffic deputies, special forces teams that we have, administration and so on and so forth. The sheriff has the obligation to and authority to run the department as he deems fit, and he allocates his resources as needed throughout the community, whether that be Point Roberts, Highway 9, Foothills, Sudden Valley, Glen Haven Lakes, and that does shift pretty much on an ongoing basis based on crime levels and citizen concerns.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody? Oh, we have one more back here. Again, name and location.
Elizabeth Huthert, 8 Westbrook Court. It's been estimated that Sudden Valley would come out better financially if they incorporated. However, the county has put a big roadblock in our way from doing that. So can you explain to us why we aren't an urban development area?
Well, you're getting a bit out of my wheelhouse, and not that I'm ducking the answer, but what you're asking is whether or not on the legislative side of it that they would support actions of Sudden Valley going on their own with that. Through the Growth Management Hearings Board, it probably could be done. It's not something that I get involved in one way or another. The land use side of it is pretty much in the wheelhouse of the council. My obligation is through Planning and Development Services, Public Works to issue permits and carry out the wishes of the council that's related to it. It would be complicated to incorporate Sudden Valley. Probably not impossible. If you want my opinion, do you want my opinion? My opinion as being the mayor of Linden for 8 years and my almost 18 years involved in public office, Sudden Valley doesn't have a tax base that's probably going to support a planning department, a police department, a fire department, or the tax base to be able to contract out for all of those services. Because once you do that, you are on the hook for the whole works. You don't have a Linden's got the agricultural community, we've got the banks, we've got businesses that are providing sales tax revenue plus property tax revenue plus all of the permitting that we get on the industrial and the commercial side of it, whereas Sudden Valley right now is primarily a residential community, and study after study after study has determined that residential property taxes are the drain on the system. They aren't the balancing, because the businesses pay more. But that doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity to take a look at it. It's just my opinion. I can't say that I've actually run the numbers, although I did spend some time on the Birch Bay community putting some rough numbers together when I was mayor of Linden, and I probably wouldn't have run for mayor of Birch Bay because it would have been very difficult to make that work. Again, personal opinions at this particular time. But again, as a community, these are the kind of things that the Sudden Valley community has faced in front of them in future years to take a look at. And if it gets serious enough that there's a group of people that are committed to look at these things, we definitely can do it. Kind of in my position, I take a look at it. I try to find out whether there's a little bit of synergy with more than one or two, or smaller groups of people, because you can run down an awful lot of paths chasing things forward. But it's a great question. I mean, I do think politically, I think that with the Whatcom County Council and probably the Bellingham Council and some of those, there's probably wouldn't be much motivation politically right now based on how things are working with growth-related issues, that they would be motivated to promote Sudden Valley going into it being a city. Okay?
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone from the world audience? Okay. Well,
Can I just close up for
Yep,
just a minute?
absolutely.
Folks, thanks so much for allowing me to be here today. There's a lot of things going on in Whatcom County. Some of you may have heard that the county council is working on possibly adjustments to the flood tax and also putting a sub-area zone assessment in. I'd encourage you over the next 3, 6, 7 months to stay involved in that. It's not necessarily being driven by the executive's office at this particular time, but I will say that the flood fund, with the new requirements that we have from the federal government related to stormwater management, is it's getting very, very expensive, and the flood fund is overspending at this particular time, and it needs to be dealt with. How it gets dealt with is really a community discussion, and that'll be happening in the next while, and encourage you to stay involved. Other than that, we have an important election coming up in November. We've got good candidates, and we also have a ballot measure for the jail. I encourage you to get knowledgeable of the candidates and get knowledgeable of the issues, and vote your conscience on November 7th. And again, it's been good being here, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you again to our county executive for coming out and having some words with us. And
May I address some of the questions that were asked? I'll
oh,
leave that up to you.
absolutely. I want to address one thing before we move on. I forgot a couple of items as we opened up. First of all, we have a stairway over here that doesn't exist anymore, so don't run out that door in case of an emergency. The exits are where you entered there or down the stairs. And we also have restrooms down the stairs or in the back. We also are, as I said before, live streaming this, but we're also recording it. And so anything that happens here, hopefully, will be recorded for the indefinitely in the future for other people to enjoy. So moving on, we have President Brown, who would like to address some of the questions himself that he heard here so far today, and then we'll move on with the agenda.
Thank you. I really appreciate being allowed to provide facts as I understand them. Okay, I'm not going to sit up here and say I know the one and only truth, but This is what I understand from my review of documents in Sudden Valley files and speaking with people who've lived here for quite some time. First of all, our residence number is closer to 7,000. We would be the fourth largest community in the county if we were a city. With regard to security, our restrictive covenants require both a security patrol and a security officer. So until our restrictive covenants can be changed, I encourage you to read them and see how difficult that would be to get a change. It's something that has continually come up, and there's certainly no opposition to changing them, other than the practical difficulty of getting every resident who owns property, every member who owns property in each and every division to agree in the percentage that's necessary. It would not be run like a regular election is in the Valley. It's a totally different process. It's all laid out in the restrictive covenants. So that's with regard to security. With regard to roads, my understanding is that the roads are actually, in fact, owned by Sudden Valley. And our restrictive covenants specify that Sudden Valley is in charge of maintenance of those roads. Private homeowners own their lot up to a certain area away from the road, but even then, Sudden Valley still has a right of way. Now, for those not familiar with that term, that simply means Sudden Valley can conduct Sudden Valley business within the right of way, whether you agree or not. So, the ditches and swales on the side of the road, part may be yours, part may be Sudden Valley's, but if Sudden Valley needs to maintain those ditches, we get to go in and maintain those ditches. If utility company needs to go in and dig something up for power line or communications, they get to do that. But the roads belong to Sudden Valley. They are ours. The other issue is that every division within Sudden Valley, and each gate has more than one division, has its own set of restrictive covenants. There's 35, some odd, 37 different restrictive covenants, and they all are not the same. Generally, they are the same, but they're not all. It is possible within state law for Sudden Valley to disassociate, to disincorporate, for a section to decide to pull away and become its own community. It's all totally legal. Once again, it's within what our restrictive covenants say is possible and within what state law would require of a nonprofit corporation that is getting rid of a huge amount of assets not in the normal course of business. So that would require, how shall I put it, the legal fees alone for getting prepared to enter into and to prepare to think about proceeding with those things would be dramatically expensive. It's not to say don't do it. It's, the bylaws are very, very clear. Petition is allowed. You can petition anything. Takes 10% of the voting population, which is in the little over 3,000. File a petition. We can put it on the ballot to see whether or not the community wants to spend the money to study the process and lay out a manual for, okay, if this is what you want to do, this is what it will cost, this is what the steps are that you go through, but that alone will require an expenditure up front that certainly we have not budgeted for. The number that I have been given in tentative conversations along those lines with our existing council is that the study itself would be about $20,000. So as you can see, if that is just to set up the rule book by which you would play the game itself is going to cost a lot more. And ultimately it may fail. So that would be money spent for nothing. So I think that's the points that I heard that obviously Jack could not address. And again, everything I know is from what I've read from looking at the documents in Sudden Valley records. Those documents are available for anyone to look at now that we've gone through. We've located them. They're in a big blue bin. in the ramshackle old ice barn. But most of them are, in fact, available online. And if they're not easily available online, send me an email, BOD Brown, or send the board BOD at Sudden Valley, BOD Brown at Sudden Valleys, and we'll get those for you to make it easier for you to see. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Larry. Could I have the next slide, please? All right, moving on with the agenda, the next item is our consolidated budget that is on the ballot in just a couple of weeks at our annual general meeting. And for that, I would like to introduce our treasurer, Carol Holton, who's going to talk about it.
I know numbers are kind of boring, but we're going to quickly go through this. You'll note in your ballot measure, the booklet, the pamphlet that you got, it covers about 5 or 6 pages, starting on page 5. So I'm not going to go through a detailed item. However, if you have a specific question, I could certainly try to answer it tonight, or failing that, please send an email to me at bodholton, that's HOULTON, at suddenvalley.com, and I will respond in any way I can. I would even be happy to sit down and go through it with you. There are a lot of components, and I think that most of you are only interested in a small portion, and not everybody's interested in the same things. So I'm going to go over the overview. So first of all, if you will look at the slide here, you'll see this is actually right out of your pamphlet. And this coming year, we're anticipating spending $2.6 million in operations for various things, and you will see more detail in that in your budget. But also online, we every month post our financials as well as departmental expenses and a lot of what we've done with our budget, just so that you know how it's prepared. Each year, we look at what have we spent in each department. What are the expenses we've had? The managers are asked to go back and look at them and to determine, of all the things that you spent money on this past year, do you anticipate the same kind of expenditures next year? Do you think costs will go up? Are there expenses that you had that were one time and will not be needed again? And all of this is adjusted very carefully, line item by line item. So the managers are very much involved in it. The accounting manager and the general manager also look at everything and ask them to sharpen their pencils multiple times. We had a number of expenses that were increased this year, and so looking at operations, it was really hard to bring it back to where it was, but we have tried to make some cost savings in the sense that we will now be able to go forward with the operations budget as we've stated, without a dues increase. So this particular budget will not require a dues increase for operations specifically. However, I am going to mention that you'll hear 2 people talk, or one person, I guess, Eric is going to be talking about the 2 measures. Those are assessments that could be added, and we have put those into the budget so that you would see what the net effect would be, and I'll show you that more on the next page. The special assessments, as you can see here, would you go back one? Sorry. Thanks, Ashley. So for the parks, this is a special assessment for parks, trails, the pools, etc. That's going to be $164,838. Also for the SURF account, which is our capital reserves and repairs and replacement fund. This is the money that is used to replace our rolling stock, our trucks, our anything like that, as well as our maintain and repair and replace our buildings. Not a lot of money, but it is working for us this year, and Eric is also going to speak to a project that is ongoing that will have a significant impact on what we are going to be doing for our capital repairs and replacement this year. And then we have the Roads Reserve Fund. This is fairly significant because it also has an assessment proposal that we're asking you to approve. It would, in fact, solve problems for our roads and would make us whole on our roads for the next 10 years, make sure that we could maintain them, fix them all, and maintain them. And so the consolidated budget is $5,476,923, right down to the dollar. All right, next slide, please. So if you look at the top half of this chart, you will see what we are currently paying in dues for 2017. And you'll see what the amounts are in each of the categories. Operations is $47.78 for a developed lot per month. Capital Repair and Replacement Fund is $10.97, and the Roads Fund is $17.29. So for those of you who have a home, it's $76.04. This is actually down from the beginning of the year, in which we had a small special assessment of $2.64 to pay for our, Mitch likes to call it super sucker. It's a hydrovac machine that does all of the work pulling the debris out of under our driveway culverts. Now, the proposed special assessments are $14 for roads. This would include the repair of all our roads, which most of that repair work has been done right now. This would also then micro seal all of our primary roads and 3/4 of our secondary roads. I've been asked, so I will say, that the other 1/4 of our secondary roads do not need micro sealing because they are in really good shape right now. So they would fall into the next micro sealing, which would come in about 5 or 6 years, and they would be micro sealed at that time. Many of you have asked about what about all the potholes that are out there with the big white spray painted circles around them. I know they look a little ominous. They were not severe enough for us to repair this year, and they will be taken care of as part of the micro sealing next year. So they're there, and we will have those repaired, assuming that this goes through. And then the Parks and Trails comes to $474. So that means for a developed lot, you'll be paying $94.78 per month. And so you can calculate where that puts you as far as approving these two proposals. I ask that you please become informed about what they are. Ask any questions you wish. We feel that they are really good decisions to be made as far as taking care of our property, and think that they are for the best benefit of Sudden Valley. So we hope that you will consider those, and I think, as Jack said it, vote your conscience. What questions do you have about the budget? Yes, please. Richard, would you stand, and then remember to say your name and your address.
Let me get the microphone over to you, please.
My name is Richard Walkie, One Canyon Court here in Sudden Valley. I've been kind of wondering, why is there such a difference between the rates being charged for folks who own lots that are undeveloped versus those who are developed? Of course, the logical sequence would be, well, they don't live here, they don't get the use. But on the other hand, the value of that lot is very much determinant on the quality of our resources here.
Good question. In fact, that's an argument that has been debated for quite some time. And I will say some prior memberships, because this was a voted thing, in which there was determination as to the fact that some people could argue that those who do not live on their property, who have an undeveloped piece of property, maybe don't travel the roads as much, they don't use the amenities as much, and so the argument, I think, was put forth that perhaps we could give them a little bit of a break. There are others who say just what you said. We all own the same piece of property, the same amenities, and we should all pay equally. But in fact, this was a bylaw that is now in place, and this is, maybe it's not a bylaw, what is it? It was a policy, is that how it goes? All right, so a board at some point in time made this a policy. It can be changed, it would have to be changed with a vote of the membership. One thing to keep in mind is the membership is required to vote on any kind of a dues change, and so that would be required to do that. But it's certainly a possibility to be looked at again. What other questions? Yes, please.
Oh, I have one back here. Name and address.
David Narcico, 15 Bramble Way.
Just on the budget, just for example, on the parks, trails, and common grounds, that's 164,000. And is that to be distributed over the 5 years, or is that 164,000 per year for each of the 5 years?
Okay, I'm going to first start that, David. Great question. I'm going to start that with saying that this particular year, 2017, was the first year we had a line item for parks and trails, and it was for $50,000, and it hardly did any of what we needed it to do. And so, no, the 164 is for each year, and that 474 or whatever the total amount is that you would pay based on your particular ownership is to fund that $164,000. And Karen is going to talk a little bit more about how that money might be spent. There are many, many things that need to be done, and it's a difficult situation. So yeah, we're going to need that, and it's for each of the 5 years. So, and she'll also talk about the fact that the money will not be spent anywhere else. It will not end up in 2 years, for instance, in some other part of operations. It will absolutely have boundaries around it and have to be used only for parks items.
And the roads reserve fund, including the special assessment, a similar question with $2,393,000, and we have a 10-year assessment on that.
Yes, if you'll note on that one, the 10 million, and I have, actually Eric's going to talk about this, but I'll just talk about the funds part of it. So if when we look at the funds on page number, well, could you go to the slide number 7 just to show, sorry, I think this is important. Okay, now I know you can't read this, got it, and you don't have your magnifying glasses for PowerPoint, but in the first column after the description is the total amount that we are going to spend on roads over the next 10 years. And then if you go to the first column, which is 2018, it shows that we're going to secure a $1.7 million loan as part of this assessment that we're doing. The reason for that is we've got to get everything done in the first year. To try to do it piecemeal is far more costly. So, but yes, it will last, the $14 lasts throughout the entire 10 years. But you'll note in looking at this that you have more money spent some years than in other years. For instance, in 2023, we have to replace the bridge and culvert at Western Lane. I don't know if any of you live in that particular area, but that's going to be an $800,000 plus project. So we are trying to level this out so that, and this was done by Wilson Engineering. They looked at all the requirements we were going to have for the next 10 years to determine what would it take on an annual basis or on a monthly basis to be able to fund each and every one of the projects they know are going to have to be done for us to keep our roads healthy. Did that answer your question? Okay, great. What other questions? Do we have anything from the viewing audience? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Holton, for that. What's next on the agenda? Oh, my part. Okay. We've had some folks that have been interested to know about the main differences between what was on the ballot this summer at the SGM and what's being offered to be voted on at the AGM here in a couple of weeks. In particular, the items that obviously aren't on the ballot that people were interested in were the marina and some improvements to the pools and the barn projects that aren't on the ballot this time. The reason that they're not on the ballot this time is because those items, and the barn that I'm talking about is not this barn. It's the ice rink barn, barn 6. Really, all of those items, the marina, the pools, and the barn, are actually failing already, and they can't wait for us to ask for an assessment going forward. Now, without the ice barn, the barn 6, we risk having no ability to store any of our winter equipment, our snow removal equipment, the sand and so on. So that definitely would impact our ability to care for the roads at all. If that, and you can see that it's falling down. You can actually put your fist inside of the posts that hold the thing up. So the pools need their liners and decks replaced now, and they actually have to be brought into ADA compliance. And those are not necessarily cheap projects, but if we don't do that, then we may not get the ability to use the pools. And if we don't use them, we lose them. They get filled in forever. The marina spit is actually failing, and if you go down and walk it, you can see the erosion that is actually pulling away from the bulkhead that's in the water that's supposed to protect the spit from wave action and so on. You can fall in between the spit and that bulkhead. So that the spit is failing, and the erosion is a big issue for our environment. But also we learned that we need a fire standpipe on the docks because of their length, and because the fire marshal can retroactively require that. There could have been grandfathering, but not anymore. Just to meet the NFPA fire code requirements, we have to do that. So those are things that if we don't do it, it doesn't get opened up, we lose it. Those are beautiful, necessary assets for our community. And the marina, for one, actually brings in some revenue that is an important necessary resource that we have. So because these needs are immediate, waiting puts our community at great risk of losing them forever. The board decided, and the board is ultimately responsible for maintaining the value of all of our assets, and has voted to complete these projects without asking for a dues increase. And that's where it would have needed to go on the ballot, if we were asking for a dues increase or an assessment to take care of them. What's happening is they're being paid for by an account, the capital reserves replacement account, that is funded to cover any loan that might be necessary to do the work now